and welcome to Take Time. I am your host, Patrick Marlette, and let's talk about what's inside this box. Whew, it's got a little bit of heft to it too. Guys, if you haven't guessed from the title of this video, inside this box is the Ginault Ocean-Rover 181070GSLID, or as I like to call it, the Rolex Destroyer. That's right, I said it, Rolex Destroyer. And I'll tell you why. Because I would never buy a Rolex, and this is a little bit more palatable. That is all jest, of course. You know I already bought my Pepsi GMT, okay? Y'all know I already bought 3 Rollies. They're just sitting in the back. They're not really worth review. But in the case of Ginault, we have a really interesting story here, and I have seen a lot of reviews on this watch. A lot has been said about this watch. I know people that own this watch. I know people that own this watch and a Rolex, which is obviously what this is derivative of. And I already know that this 2-part review is going to be divisive, but I'm actually pretty excited to talk about this watch, and I'll give you my reasons. Unlike many of the Homage competitors out there in the market that are almost always in the $500 category and just odd derivations of the Rolex Submariner. They almost always copy the Rolex Submariner, and there's a lot of groups, like big and small. Not only these micro brands, but there are Seiko copies of the Submariner. There are Bulova copies of the Submariner. Everyone does a copy of that watch because it's very iconic. But unlike the competition, which make affordable, sometimes well-crafted versions of the Rolex Submariner, Ginault is making the opposite. They're making something that's oftentimes 2 or 3 times the cost of their competition's Homage, but very faithful in the recreation. From what I've gathered from other reviews and blog sites, it is of quality craftsmanship. And that's what John and the team over at Ginault are trying to accomplish here. And I've talked to them about this timepiece quite a bit. It's funny how John actually touched base with me. Thank you for sending this my way. But to my understanding, what they want to represent with their offering is something that rivals, which is saying a lot, not only the craftsmanship, but the quality and the experience of what a Rolex Submariner is on the wrist, but without the high cost. Because even at the, I think it's roughly $1,300, it depends on the model you get, but roughly $1,300 price point of this timepiece, they want to provide the same experience as a Rolex Submariner, not just something that looks like it. So that's saying a lot, and how you gauge that is going to be difficult. Now I want to start by saying that if I give a flattering opinion of this watch or a heinous one, guess what? The watch was actually gifted to the channel for this review. So thank you so much, guys, for trusting me with this watch, and thank you for gifting it to me, because I understand you put a lot of time and effort into these, so I really appreciate that. On the topic of Homage watches, if you don't like Homage watches, well, this might not be the video for you. I don't know why you're watching it. But if you are, thank you for joining the channel. If you do like Homage watches, well, expect a fair review of this timepiece. But if you're on the fence regarding watches like this, I understand the argument that these types of timepieces, Ginault aside, every copy out there sort of bastardizes the market. And I think the larger argument is, does that hurt someone's market? Like Rolex. Is this taking prospective Rolex buyers away from buying an actual Rolex Submariner? I think not. But I can understand that argument. Now, does this watch group separate its timepiece enough from what its competitor is doing? Well, we'll find out, obviously, when we unbox this watch. Now, if you're new to the channel, here is how these 2-part reviews work. In the unboxing and first impression, which is this video here, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the timepiece, I'm more than happy to answer them in the comments section. But a lot of those larger points, a lot of the reoccurring questions and or concerns that are brought up, I like to answer in our part 2 video, which happens a week later, and it is an in-depth review of the watch. So if you have any questions about this timepiece, feel free to start lining those up now before I delve into this unboxing and first impression. So the Ocean-Rover made its splash into the scene God, I want to say last year, or at least most of its notoriety showed up around then. You know, back in 2017, the Ocean-Rover was all over the YouTubes. Like, it was one of the only homage pieces I was hearing about. And, you know, ever since back then, I wanted to get one in. So this is pretty exciting for me because all I was hearing about it were good things. So I can only imagine that the watch is pretty phenomenal. And we'll find out after a week in the life. But here goes. Let's see how it arrives. All right. So we've got a mixture of bubble wrappy and paper. The thing is, you know, this may not be how yours arrives at the door, but that's how it was shipped to me. So there's a basic idea of what that experience might look like. And with all of the packing neatly out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside this sleeve. Oh man, it's not one to come undone. There we go. The outer shell of the packing here kept catching that leatherette of the case. I'm assuming it's leatherette. I'd be very impressed if it was actual leather. But the box itself is really nice. Nothing too fussy. I like the logo imprinted on the top of it. It's nice and padded, so if you want to rest something there, that might be an idea for some of you. This is one of the smaller display boxes I've seen. So it is something that you can actually go to as a storage box and or display box without being too obnoxious. I do like the scale of it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. So you guys know the latter half of the name of this watch, GSLID, that stands for Gold Sand Lume, and it also indicates that the bezel insert on our particular model is going to be blue and gold. Now, what I'm going to do is put this off to the side so we can take a look at that in just a moment and look at the interior of this box instead. And it looks like up top we've got nice custom microfiber cloth with the brand's logo on it, of course. We have some paperwork. Let's go ahead and see what this says. Something about a warranty. Hey, look, my name is there. Thank you, guys. Review unit. Yeah, it is. It is a review unit. I'm not even going to bother reading over this warranty because I trust the guys and I trust that they made a fantastic watch. Do not steer me wrong. Let's see what else we've got in here. Nice. Wow. Okay, so time measurements. Like what you'd receive from Grand Seiko for Grand Seiko certification and or chronometer certification. Very, very nice. It's nice to know the accuracy of your watch. We're going to go ahead and put this off to the side for now and take a look at that strap that's back there. So we have a two-piece sort of Zulu style strap. I say Zulu because of how thick that hardware is. It looks as though it has been bead blasted, so we'll see how that pairs with the watch itself. But I do like the beige or sand tone of it, so that should pair well with at least the lume that's on the dial. And to my understanding, at least from the product images, it looks like the lume has a darker tone to it, similar to the patina on an older Rolex Submariner. We'll find out if that's true or not, but it will likely match this strap. And lastly, at the bottom end of our box here, it looks like we have a spring bar tool, maybe? Oh no, hey, this is a small jeweler's flathead screwdriver. Now, the links, I believe, are going to operate with this flathead screw, so we can go ahead and remove them and size this up a little bit later with this guy. Very nice to include that. Thank you. I'm going to drop that in the box and move the box for now, as well as all of our other accoutrements. And let's just put this guy center stage. I went ahead and removed that bubble wrap for us, but in front of us is the Ginault Ocean-Rover with the blue and gold bezel insert. Let me go ahead and remove all of this stuff as well so we can get a better look. Now, if memory serves me correct, I believe that the width of this watch is approximately 40 millimeters. We have a 48 lug to lug measurement with a 20 millimeter lug width. And the thickness, if I'm correct, is somewhere around 12 millimeters. So that's sort of standard fare for a dive watch. And so far as the dimensions are concerned, it's pretty much, this clasp is very reminiscent as well. This should be just about in line with what a modern Rolex Submariner is too. So give or take a few millimeters here and there, you're going to get something that wears much the same. Now, I went ahead and took the liberty of removing the rest of the protective stickers from the case. I left the ones on the bracelets intact because I'm going to go ahead and size this a little bit later off camera to get it to fit onto my wrist, but everything on the watch head has been removed. Now, this is going to be a tough watch for me to review because I'm going to want to review it on its own merits, but of course, it is very similar to another watch that's out there in the world, which is the Rolex Submariner. So of course, I'm going to pay credit where credit is due in some areas whilst reviewing this, but also credit this watch for some of its own key features. Namely, opting out the Mercedes hands for the sword hand set we see here. I'm a much bigger fan of the sword hands on the Submariner dial face, and I like that they went with this look instead of the standard option we see in modern Rolex Submariners. And I also like the color ways you can get this watch in. Particularly, obviously, this blue bezel insert with gold accents. I thought this was probably the most handsome amongst their lineup, and I always love blue dive watches, so if I can get accented colors in blue, I also like that as well. So right off the bat, the red seconds hand really stands out on the dial. Whether I like it or not, I have yet to make up my mind on because this is a first impression, but it does leave a statement when you take in the dial. What's interesting about this is it's not a gilt dial. It's only accented gold on the bezel insert and has silver applied markings instead. And I kind of like this. It's sort of the opposite of your typical gilt dial watch. More oftentimes than not, you'll find that the markers on the bezel insert are silver while the dial has gold applied markers. I like how they took the opposite approach with that design here. The bezel itself handles really well. It's nice and easy to turn. I don't have to do anything crazy to get it going. I can do so with just 2 fingers. It seems to lock in place very nicely. There is a little bit of back play, and what I mean by that is when you get it set in place, you do need to pivot it back the direction it was turning from to get it to rest, and you can sort of see what I mean there. And that's pretty common for most dive watches, and if you are a Rolex or Tudor user, let me know if that's common in your experience, but that is part of the experience here. And as this is trying to replicate the same experience for Rolex users, I'd love to get your opinion. If you were watching this video and own a Rolex Submariner, let me know your thoughts on this brand. If this was something you were trying to get as a beater or just an alternative to, your Rolex Submariner, let me know your thoughts. And those high polish bits do pick up smudges pretty easily. I'm using the Ginault fiber cloth to remove my fingerprints from the sides here so we can take them in, but the high polish effect is stunning. It's cut really, really well, this case. The machining is fantastic. I love the nice sharp edges. This is not child friendly, and that's just how I like my cases to be cut. And you can see a very fine, slight beveled edge that leads to the tips of the lugs, and it's just a gorgeous accent. Very, very well machined. So far, I can see where the comments on the craftsmanship have come from. The case itself is machined extremely well, better than any other Homage I've seen up to this point. And I like how they follow the silhouette of the Rolex Submariner to a T. This doesn't deviate and create banana lugs. If you've seen my Steinhardt video, you'll know what I'm talking about. It actually has a very nice profile to it, again, akin to Tudor and Rolex. The bracelet itself seems to be executed extremely well. I love how tight the taper is on the bracelet itself. I don't know how far down this shrinks, but I bet you it's going to provide a very nice wearing experience, and I'm very excited to size this and find out just how nice this bracelet feels on the wrist. But it's also machined very well. Of course, time will tell about wearability and, of course, how nice this Oyster Link bracelet is. But I'm going to go ahead and size this later and provide that feedback in our part 2. For Rolex users, this clasp is going to be very, very familiar. Everything down to the locking mechanism is extremely similar to what Rolex is offering in their modern dive watches. And I noticed some form of dive extension under this clasp that, of course, I'll experiment with later because I'm not entirely certain how it works. But I will figure that out and talk about that in our part 2 as well. But I have to say the locking mechanism on this clasp is fantastic. I love how flush this top half sits. It actually sits inside a recessed area so that it looks completely flush to the eye. And that's extremely aesthetically pleasing. And, I know some of you are going to complain about this. There, so you get a little bit better look at the clasp. It looks phenomenal. Plenty of room to have your own custom engraving done. Would I have liked to have seen the Ginault flower there? Yes, it would have been nice to see a little bit of embellishment, maybe a little bit of pride from the group. But they went ahead and went sans the logo. Well, gang, there's not much else to say here. We have a really gorgeous, well-crafted recreation of a Rolex Submariner, and I'm very excited to see what this watch is like after a week in the life. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this piece, let me know. If you're interested in buying one, feel free to pose those questions now, and I'd be more than happy to answer them in our part 2. Of course, we can share in the conversation in the comments section down below as well. So feel free to pose any questions about this timepiece. I'm really excited with this watch after having it in hand. I mean, the overall build quality is there. I mean, it's really, really nice. It's shaping up to be a really swell watch. And again, only time will tell, but I'm pretty darn excited about our part 2 now. Oh, and by the way, the dial itself is enamel. So if you notice that deep, deep black sheen to it, that sort of high polished look, that is why. And let me go ahead and try hacking this guy. There we go. Now it appears to have a phantom step, which I'm never really a fan of, but is that true? No, it's just a really long pull to get it to hack. I'm going to look at that off camera, but yeah, you can hand wind it, all that good stuff, hack it. It seems to be just fine for that. Well, I answered that question. There does appear to be a little bit of a phantom step right here. It's interesting because when you move it in this position, you can tell that there is no date wheel under the dial. All of that assembly has been completely removed, but there is a initial step before you can hack the watch in place and obviously set your time. So I'm not a big fan of that. At any rate, I'm going to give this watch a thorough review, but if you found this video entertaining or in the least insightful, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a little something like this. If you have friends, forums, or groups that were interested in the Ginault Ocean-Rover series, they wanted something that was just a cut above the standard Homage offered on the market, well, maybe send them this video so they can pose any of their own questions or start up conversations in the comment section down below here regarding this timepiece. I'd love to hear more from you guys if you own this watch. I'd love to hear more from you guys if you own a Tudor or Rolex Submariner. I'd love to get your thoughts on this piece as I evaluate it. And I'd love to share all of those thoughts down below. Again, I'm pretty excited for this one. It seems to be well crafted, so we'll see how it goes. And if you are new to the channel, welcome. I do videos like this twice a week, so if watch content is your thing, I'll advise you to hit that subscribe button just down below. And if you want to see the part 2 video as it comes out, you can hit that bell icon and it will alert you precisely when it arrives. Again, my name is Patrick Marlette, and thank you for the time.